Hi, welcome to my channel. Thank you for stopping by for this little Q&A. I asked on Instagram if anyone had any questions, and these are the ones that people asked. I haven't actually looked at them properly, so I'm seeing them for the same, I'm seeing them fresh as you are, so it's off the cuff answers. And sorry, yeah, I'll look at my phone because that's where the questions are. Joni Stoate says, what band is your husband in? He's not actually in a band. He was a musician, but he was just like a freelance bass player, played for a lot of different bands, and he's actually stopped doing that last year. He started his own record label and publishing company. Bex Lee 1 says, have you ever done any proper sleep training with Jet or Nova, not just weaning? Yes, we kind of did some proper sleep training with Jet. I actually did a video all about it, so I will link it below. We did very gentle, nothing too severe. When Jet was about 9 or 10 months, we clocked that every night we were rocking him to sleep. And he was still in our room, and every night we were rocking him to sleep. It was one evening, I remember rocking him and being like, he's so heavy, why are my arms so painful? And then I was like, maybe I shouldn't be rocking him to sleep still at this stage. But I think he was our first baby. I think in my head he was still our little newborn. On the same day, we moved him into his own room and stopped rocking him to sleep. And that was a kind of 3-4 day process that we did. I did a video about it, so check that out. L Tets says, you and your sisters are raising children in such different places. Are there things about their experiences? And then it cuts out because the Instagram questions are really annoying and they only give you a certain number of words. I'm just gonna guess that you're saying, are there things about the experiences that we draw from? I don't know. But yes, so I'm one of 4 and I've got 3 sisters, no brothers. So my eldest sister lives up north in Newcastle, and then my next sister down lives in Zimbabwe. And then my younger sister lives in Brighton as well. So my 2 older sisters both have children. My eldest has twins, a girl and boy, and they are 4 months, just over 4 months. And then my next sister down, who's in Zim, she's got a 5.5, 4.5, 3 and 4 month. So she's got 4 kind of 5 and under. So we visited Zim a couple of times, but just once since having children. So I've just been once with Jet when he was about 8 months. And I haven't been yet with Nova. They just all came over for Christmas, all the children. The eldest is adopted, so they hadn't come over with him yet. But she's been over with other arrangements of her children at different times. I hate that my sisters live far away. I wish they all lived, in this house with me. But I do love seeing them raise their children in these different places. And I've actually talked about it before. I think I talked about it in a newborn tips video. I found it really fascinating watching my sister raise children in Africa, because they live very rurally on a farm, often with electricity completely cutting out and not many shops, and yeah, just very basic. I've definitely learned a lot from her about all the paraphernalia that we're kind of fed that we need with children, and actually so much of it is just completely unnecessary. So a lot of stuff like that I've taken from her. I love it. I think it's so important for children as they're growing up to know that the way they're being raised is not the only way, and where they live is not the only place, and to experience different cultures. And I definitely really want to travel more with Jet and Nova. Me and Henry travelled a lot before having them, and I want to travel more with them. I definitely want to take them back to Zim and for them to just see different ways of growing up. But yeah, I'm so sorry, I don't totally know what the question was. Mrs. Amy Kerr, how did you tell Jet the dummy was going, and how's it going so far? So Jet is 2.5, or just over 2.5, and he's had his dummy from when he was about a week old. He's had it every day since then. He did have it in the day until he was maybe about 18 months, and then we made it that it was just something he had at night in his bed. And it was such a useful tool that he knew it was only in his bed. If he didn't want to go to sleep, I could just say, don't you want to come and have your dummies? And kind of lay them out like the Pied Piper or something, and he'd come and follow me, desperate for his dummies. So it was a really hard decision to decide to stop using them. Didn't tell him till quite soon before, because I feel like a 2.5-year-old, I don't know in terms of their memory of kind of how long they can retain information for. So we were away over Christmas with my family. We were coming back on New Year's Eve, and I felt like it was quite a good time leaving one location and moving to another. I felt like it was a really good way of explaining to him, when we leave here, we're gonna leave your dummies, and when we go home, there's no dummies. The day before we left, I started talking to him about it. In the day when he went down for his nap and had his dummies, I said, tomorrow we're gonna give all your dummies to your cousin Scout, who is only little and she needs dummies, and you're a big boy, and so big boys don't need dummies anymore, so you're gonna give them to your cousin. And I think he kind of got it, and he was talking about it. He was, oh, Scout have Jet's dummies, Scout needs Jet's dummies, Jet have no dummies, Jet's a big boy. And so I think he did kind of take it in. We talked about it a bit that day, and then the next morning did a little ceremony, got all his dummies, he handed them over to Scout, and then we left to drive home. And the drive home was about 4 hours. And for the first hour of the car journey, he just sobbed because we were leaving at his nap time. So he'd normally get in the car, have his dummy and fall straight to sleep. And obviously we weren't giving him his dummy. And that, I think, is when the penny dropped. And he was saying, Scout have dummies, where's Jet's dummies, where's Jet's dummies? And I think he'd kind of got it, but he also kind of hadn't. So that was the hardest bit, that journey, with him just sobbing and I trying to give him snacks or toys or anything I could, but I just knew he was beyond tired, just needed to nap, but wanted his dummies. And eventually, after about an hour, he fell asleep. Then that evening, again, he was just so used to his routine. So then after his bath, he'd always have his milk and then his dummy while I got him into his pajamas. So he finished his milk and then straight away, obviously, wanted his dummy. So we just explained again. It was just really useful having this set event that we could talk about every time, so we could just say, we gave your dummies to Scout, so we don't have any dummies anymore. Also, what I made sure I did was we actually genuinely gave her all his dummies, so that I couldn't even go back on my word, even if I wanted to, because I knew I'd probably be tempted in the moment or in the middle of the night to just give him a dummy. So we just gave them all to her. And then the next day, he didn't ask about them. He didn't ask about them for his nap. And then that afternoon, I said to him, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud that you don't have your dummies anymore. And he looked at me a bit blankly, and I think he'd almost forgotten about them. And me talking about it had reminded him. So then I just didn't mention them after that. And yeah, and that was it. And he hasn't had them since. And we've had a few unsettled nights. He hasn't asked for his dummies. He's just generally been unsettled. And I think consciously he's got used to not having them. But I think subconsciously still, when he's stirring in the night, it's so ingrained in him to look for his dummy and to have that as his comfort. So I think still in the night, he's waking and not really knowing how to comfort himself. And then, so that's been a bit tricky, but I've definitely seen it get better and better. Sue's Log says, how are you coping space-wise? Babies need so much stuff. How do you manage things not getting too cluttered? Yeah, I'm finding that hard. We try really, really hard to keep everything they own quite minimal. They both have very minimal wardrobes. They both just have a drawer within a chest of drawers. So if it doesn't fit in that drawer, then we kind of go through it all and see what they don't need and what we can give to charity. Their clothes stay quite contained, and same with their toys. I'm quite strict with their toys. I'm a bit of a boring parent. I'm very strict. So they don't have a lot of the kind of big plasticky toys that take up a lot of space. They don't really have anything like that. Some of Jet's favourite toys are like his bike and his scooter, so they're just outside in the shed. And then we've got a few toy storage bags, and all their toys stay in there, kind of split up into Lego, train track, and then like musical instruments and puzzles and all those kind of like little bits. Sorry, I probably keep looking down. I'm looking into our living room now, and there's definitely things I don't like he's got like a car park. It's really nice, like a wooden one from John Lewis, but it is just kind of sat in our living room, and I don't like that like the kids' stuff is in the house even when the kids aren't playing with it. So I would like to have something where we could hide it all away, but we just don't really have the space. I think the main thing is that they need less than you think. I hope that answers that question. Silly Lou. I remember you saying you work as an actor. So my question is, have you done anything recently, and are you... And then the question cuts out again. Oh, it's so annoying that it doesn't let you see the whole question. Yeah, so I'm trained as an actress. I went to like a performing arts school for my schooling. So from year 9, year 10 through to sixth form and A-levels. And then when I left school, I just moved to London, started working at John Lewis, and then started nannying, and then met my husband and got married, and then went back to drama school later. And so I did a year in 2014, and then have been working since then. But I mean, when you say working as an actress, it's very, very hit and miss. So sometimes really busy, sometimes doing absolutely nothing. And then obviously having babies has really thrown it all off again. So I worked quite a long way through my pregnancy with Jet. I think because he was my first baby, I didn't really show. And so I was doing a play when I was 22 weeks pregnant, and just had to be in normal clothes and just kind of like buttoned up my jeans and pretended there was nothing there. And then I did an advert, I think when I was about 25 weeks. And again, I didn't tell my agent that I was pregnant, because I was just worried that they then wouldn't put me forward for stuff. And so I did this advert. Luckily she was in pajamas, so I could kind of hide it. But by the end of the day, my stomach was quite sore, and I just felt really guilty. And I realized that I'd kind of been slightly in denial that my life was going to change, and that this pregnancy was going to change everything. And obviously felt bad that I'd kind of put myself before the baby's well-being. So from then onwards, I pulled back on what I was doing, told my agent that I was pregnant so they weren't putting me forward for all these non-pregnant roles, and everything just massively slowed down and went very quiet. Did a bit of work again after I had Jet, but then quite soon after Jet got pregnant with Nova, and again didn't really work much during that pregnancy. Obviously just was busy with children. Anyway, so now Nova is now 10 months, she's not breastfeeding, Jet's in nursery, and so I feel like I'm kind of finally getting myself back. I feel like I've got my body back in terms of, you know, there's no one feeding from me. So kind of these last few months, I'm slowly trying to get back into work and get back out there again, which as an actress is very daunting, because the longer you're out of it, you just feel really, really out of the loop. I really envy people that kind of take maternity and go back to the same job. For me, it's very different, trying to get back into it and explain to casting directors why your CV is very quiet for like 2017 and 18. Anyway, that's a very long answer. How did you find the age gap between Jet and Nova? Says Erin Loveridge. So they're 22 months apart, and if I'm completely honest, I found the first 6 months really hard. I found the adjustment just a lot more of a shock than I was expecting. Jet still needing a lot from me as a little child that didn't really understand the English language and couldn't really wait and didn't have the patience that I kind of wanted from him with this baby that also needed me. And then I feel like when Nova turned 6 months and Jet was about 2.5, it all kind of slotted into place. And with her sitting and eating and him being able to really chat and really understand me and just be able to do little things for himself, like putting his shoes on and his coat on, made such a difference. And now I love the age gap because they're such sweet friends. She adores him, she crawls after him, chasing him around, and they just love each other, and I think they'll be really close as they get older. So I really like that. I don't think there's a perfect age gap. I don't think there's any awful age gap, and I don't think there's any perfect age gap. I think they all just have pros and cons, and so it's kind of whatever works best for you. So with me and my sisters, there's like an 18-month gap, then a 3-year gap, then a 5-year gap, and I'm equally as close to all those different sisters now, regardless of our age gap. So yeah, I think you just do what works for you. How do you manage to get ready with 2 kids? I'm struggling with just 1, says Lisa H Design. Yeah, that is tricky. My aim is always to get up before them and get ready, and that never happens. I am lucky that with me and Henry's lifestyle, work-life balance being quite flexible, he works a lot from home, so we can kind of attack the morning routine together. I used to do my makeup and everything in my bedroom, and now I've brought it all through to the kitchen. We've got a little mirror in the kitchen, so now I tend to give them both some fruit or something before they have their breakfast, and I do my makeup there in the kitchen with them while they're happy, and Nova's contained in her high chair, Jet's at his table, and then do their breakfast, and then kind of all get dressed together. Because I like to do my makeup every day. It just makes me feel a bit more like myself. I don't wear loads, but for me, I almost feel more awake if I do my makeup. If I don't have my makeup on, I feel like my eyes are more closed and I just feel more tired the whole day. So that's something that I didn't want to let slip with children. I find my makeup bag in the kitchen. That just kind of works. How would you describe your parenting style, says One Boy and His Dog. Relaxed, I'd hope, is my aim. My aim is always to be relaxed. So even if they're terrifying me in the playground and Jet's climbing something really high, I try and just have a quite chilled tone in my voice and just be nice and calm so that he doesn't like sense my panic, so that he's not a really nervous child when it comes to nerve-wracking things. Obviously I want him to have like a sense of fear that some things are dangerous, but I try and instill kind of calm in him. I think also, I don't know if it's a parenting style, but I kind of made a decision when I had children to just actively not care what other people think. And actually, I think that's made a really big difference. There's a lot of stuff that I know people get quite worried about of, oh, will people judge this or judge that? And I just think, who cares? If it's their opinion, it's their opinion. And there's been a few times that that's not worked, especially Jet went through a really violent stage of doing a lot of pushing and hitting, and I really let other people's opinions, or what I thought their opinions were, I really let those get to me, and they probably weren't even thinking it anyway. But in general, I try and just do my thing and not let kind of like outside opinions influence me. What are the things that Henry has done as a father that frustrated you, and how did you overcome them, says Aidan Nadia. That's a good question. This isn't something that Henry does that frustrates me, but one of the things that frustrates me the most in the world is when people talk to the mum and the dad differently, as if such different things are expected of you. And so if Henry is with the children, to kind of congratulate him for being with the children, or if Henry's with the children, to say like, oh, daddy daycare, daddy's on babysitting duties. It's like, he's not babysitting, he's their father. That really winds me up. But no, he's a brilliant dad, and I think a lot of the time I'm probably doing stuff that annoys him. I'm definitely not naturally a homemaker. Like, I'm not a natural cook. I hate cleaning. I'm not very organized. I don't think to like plan meals and plan activities and like organize everything in like neat little ways, and like all this like Mrs. Hinch that everyone was loving just goes straight over my head. So actually Henry is amazing, and he does a lot of the cooking, and he started baking bread, and he's great basically. I don't think he does anything that frustrates me. How did you prepare your room for sharing with a baby? Handy things to keep close by. Any tips? Says Lady Glamazon X. That's a good question. We didn't do loads. So we got the snooze pod, which is the 3-sided crib, and put that on my side of the bed because I was breastfeeding. And then by my bed, I always made sure I had a big bottle of water and sometimes snacks if she was going through a particularly bad feeding time, and then a muslin. And then we just also always made sure we had nappy and wipes in our bedroom, because often when she was really little she would do a poo in the middle of the night, which was very annoying. But yeah, other than that, I don't think we changed much in our room. Lady Glamazon, also another question. What age are you? I am 29 and I will be 30 this summer, which I am not looking forward to. I'm nervous about leaving my 20s. Anna Silves says, why does some of your family live in Zimbabwe? So my sister just decided she wanted to move there when she was about 13. She just announced to us all that she was going to move to Zimbabwe when she was older, and then she's a girl of her word. So she studied to be a teacher, and she knew she wanted to go out and either help in a school or start a school out there. And then through some friends, she met this guy who worked on a farm out there. He was born there and lived there till he was early teens, and then moved back to England. And then he'd moved back out in his early 20s, and they met because he was working on a farm that on the farmland they had a building that could be used for a school. And so they met up, and then they ended up falling in love and getting married. And so Ezra, my brother-in-law, works on that farm, and Martha lives on the farm and works at the school and has helped start up this school. Oh man, I've just realised my thing's been hanging out my whole video. That's annoying. And so she's lived there for 8 years and will be there forever, probably. Has Hutch says, do you have any goals for 2019? So I hate New Year's resolutions. I find it's like this horrible pressure that you put on yourself, and I just feel really panicked and can't really cope. And I feel like they always end up just being kind of diet related. So I haven't done any New Year's resolutions, but me and Henry, one of my favourite days of the year is in January. We leave the kids and go for a coffee and talk about what we want to achieve that year. So we have kind of within our career and within our own personal lives, and then within our family life, we have some goals that we want to achieve, and then also more kind of like dreams or hopes for the year. And then with the goals, we kind of action them of, okay, how can we get to this goal? And then within the dreams and hopes, can't quite action them in the same way, but try and think about some ways that you could work towards those hopes. And I love it. So on that day, we look back at the last year's ones and kind of see what happened, and then we make the ones for the next year. So we haven't actually had that date. We're doing that this week. I would say for me, my goals for this year, I think, are to get back into a kind of working rhythm now that both children are that bit older. I want to travel more this year. We didn't really travel much last year, obviously being pregnant and then having a newborn, but I'd like to travel more. Most of mine this year are quite work related now that I feel like I'm kind of out of the baby bubble. Olga says, why is one of your sisters living in Africa? I loved that you were all together this year, by the way. Thank you, Olga. Yeah, so as I said, I already answered that. Christina, 1283. I'm a relative new mum of a 7-month boy who has his first lot of viral cold, high temperature, coughing, teething, etc. Any surviving tips? Calpol. Calpol. And last question. Haji85. But drove myself mad with my 20-month-old with people talking about his speech delay. Did you ever experience any anxiety about these milestones? I didn't really, and I think I just always think of the Michael McIntyre sketch where he jokes about adults crawling into a room, and that your baby will learn to walk, they will learn to talk, they will potty train, they're never going to not do any of those things. And so it just doesn't matter when they do. Within those few months or years, they kind of go at their own pace, and that's completely fine. So I'd try your best to not worry about it. People are always going to have an opinion, but they don't know your child, and he will talk. He's not going to not talk at 10 years old, so don't worry. But obviously if you are worried, you know, go and see a professional or chat to other friends that you trust their opinion. But don't let kind of snide remarks get to you, because it reflects more on the person that's making the snide remark rather than on you. But yeah, that's all of them. Sorry, I feel like that's been a very long video. Thank you for sticking by if you have stuck by for the whole thing. I like doing those because it's nice to kind of get the conversation going, get to know each other a bit more. I can also hear Nova's just woken up, so now is definitely my cue. Thank you so much for watching. We'd love it if you subscribed. It's very nice to feel like people are kind of here to stay and are invested in our channel. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you soon. Peace out.